Well, good morning, everybody. I have the top of the hour, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Tech in the Workplace, day 3. We're going to continue on with Excel today. About 3 hours ago, I sent you an email with some files in it that we will be using. So if you have not downloaded those yet, please go to your email and download those files. Just as a reminder, this session is being recorded, so anything that you say or put in the chat will be in that recording. Just want to start off to see if there's any questions from last week. We are going to do a little bit of a review. So you can ask questions now or along the way. And of course, if you have questions outside of our Tech in the Workplace webinars, you can always email me. So I have the chat over here on another monitor. All right, I don't see any questions, so let's go ahead and begin. We're going to start with something called Tacos template. The Tacos template. If you don't have that open, I can probably put that in the chat. Yeah, there we go. So either way, either from your email or from the chat, you can go ahead and open the Tacos template. So what we're looking at on this particular workbook is we have Tacos Are Fun, which is our title. We're going to start off by doing a little bit of modification to the makeup of this workbook, and then we'll go on and we'll review our data validation. We're also going to use something called an XLOOKUP. That's something that is fairly new to Microsoft Excel. In the past, we have used XLOOKUPs, HLOOKUPs, but now they have an XLOOKUP, and it makes things a lot easier for you to utilize. So what the XLOOKUP is going to do is it's going to take the menu item and it will automatically pull the price from sheet 2. And then we'll put in our quantity. We will create our totals for the subtotal for our tax. So we'll be reviewing the relative versus absolute reference on our line total, and then the totals for the subtotal for the tax and for our line total. Lots of things going on. We're also going to review how to change the name of these sheets, how to insert a table array. So I'm going to go through this. At any point in time, if you need me to slow down or to repeat something, just let me know. I do have my eye on the chat. I apologize for the glare. The sun is out today, which is a good thing, but it's also created glare off of my glasses. So let's look at the Tacos template. The first thing that I'd like you to do is to go in and highlight from A1 all the way over to F1. We're going to go underneath the alignment group, and we're going to tell Tacos Are Fun to merge and center. Now, what does that mean? That means that it's going to take cells A1, B1, C1, D1, E1, and F1 and create one cell out of those 6 cells. So if I just come up here and click on merge and center, it puts Tacos Are Fun right in the middle. Now, it appears that we have an extra row here that we don't need. So after we merge and center, and I'll just go ahead and undo that and show you that again. Again, first you need to select all the way from A1 to F1, and we're going to merge and center. Now you could merge across, you can merge the cells, and this is how you would unmerge the cells as well. Sometimes we need to unmerge those cells so they would go back to their original setting. But I'm just gonna click on merge and center, that is what it defaults to, so you don't necessarily need to click on the down arrow. You do need to just click on merge and center. Then we're gonna come down and we're going to go ahead and get rid of row 2. So we're gonna delete row 2 before we continue to work with row 1. So I'm just gonna come down and I'm going to select row 2. Let me make my mouse, I guess it's kind of big. Let me make it just a little bit bigger for you. Seems to be going a little slower today. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna come over, I'm gonna hover the mouse over the number 2. When I click on that, it selects the entire row 2. To delete that, you've got some options. You can right click and you can highlight delete, or you can come up to the cells group and you can click on delete. Either way is just fine. We just want to delete that row. Now, you know what? My mouse is too big. I'm not gonna be able to. Sorry about that. And it's making it hard for me to work in Excel this way. So let's make it a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select row 1. And what we want to do in row 1 is we want to make this just a little bit that we want to increase the height. So I'm going to come over to format and I'm going to go to row height. So in row height, it's 14.25. Let's just put in maybe 35 or so. Let's see what that does. Looks pretty good. Okay, so we have our row height. Now, the one thing that you're probably used to from other software programs is that you can left align, you can middle align, and you can right align. And we told Excel that we wanted to merge and center, which is what we want to do. But right above that, you have the ability to top align, to middle align, or to bottom align. Excel defaults to the bottom align. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to tell it that I want it to middle align, and it will put Tacos Are Fun not only centered across A through F, but centered horizontally within those merged cells. Now, I'm going to increase my font size just a tad bit. We've got a lot of room in here to work with, and we want everybody to know what the name of our business is. So I'm going to, I don't know why there's an apostrophe in there. So Tacos Are Fun. Now, I am going to come up and I'm going to change the color. So where do I change the color? Underneath the font group, you have a little paint can. I think it looks a little bit like a graduation cap myself. You can see, I can see a paint can and I can see a graduation cap. So go up to the background color. That's your background color, and select something that you think is fun. Maybe something springy. I'm just going to go for the green, and then I'm going to come over to my A, and that allows me to change my font color. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that maybe to white. So put a little pizzazz in our worksheet. Now, the other thing that's really nice about Microsoft Excel is that you can also put pictures in here. So we're going to move from the home ribbon over to the insert ribbon. And on the insert ribbon, I'm just going to come over and I'm going to go to illustrations. And you're going to look for something called pictures. Now, my version of Excel, like we talked about last week, might be just a tad bit different. But you should be able to, on your illustrations, you should be able to find a place where it says insert picture from this device. It may not say mobile device. That is something new that I actually have never tested yet. So look for this device, stock images, or online pictures. So this device is going to give you the ability to browse on your personal PC or your work PC, whichever one you're on. And look for a picture. You can also pull pictures now from your mobile device. You can go into stock images, which Microsoft has. I don't know whether they own the stock images or they purchase the rights to use the stock images. At any rate, they're there for us as the end user to pull from. The one thing that you want to remember with stock images is if you're looking for maybe a specific Mexican restaurant or a taco restaurant, or if you're looking for something in the state of Nebraska, it's not going to have that. It needs to be generic. I could type in tacos, I could type in football, but I couldn't type in Nebraska football. If that's the sort of thing that you're looking for, then you could go to online pictures. I'm going to do a demonstration of both. So let's just start with online pictures. When you go to online pictures, Microsoft is going to open up a search engine called Bing. So you have multiple search engines that you can utilize: Bing, Yahoo, Google. All of those have the same purpose. They are going to search for whatever you are looking for on the internet. In this case, it's defaulting to images for us. So I could type in tacos. And the beauty of this is that we don't have to open another application, or we don't have to go outside of this application. So here are just some pictures of tacos. It always seems like my demonstrations have something to do with food, which always makes me hungry. Ooh, that looks good. So I'm going to just select a taco, and I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click on insert. Okay, well, that taco came in very, very big. So when the picture came in, you'll also note that we have another ribbon, which is called picture format. So I can come up to where it says height, and maybe I just want to make this 1 inch rather than almost 6. When I hit the enter key, it's automatically going to update the width. Okay, and that's even still too big. Now, if you're working at home and you just did that, and your width did not adjust with your height, come to sizing. Click on the this arrow right here that says size and property. And you can move, make sure that there is a check mark in lock aspect ratio. All right. That will allow it, if you change the height or the width, it's automatically going to change the other one. So it's going to adjust both. I'm going to go to height. I'm going to put in 0.5. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's see what we have. I'm going to go ahead and just close this. And maybe it's still just a little bit too big. I can manually adjust it if I want to. You don't have to adjust it through the picture format. I just think it's a little bit easier to do it that way. So I have a picture on my left side. Hopefully you do too. As I promised, I am going to show you how to insert another picture. We want a couple of pictures on here. So I'm going to go back to insert and to pictures. And I'm going to go to place in cell or place over cell. I'm just going to say place in cell. We'll go to stock images this time. So when you go to stock images, you're going to get something called images. You have icons. You have cutout people. You have stickers. You have illustration. You have cartoon people. So if you're someone that is into the emojis, the illustrations, stickers, and so on, you're really going to enjoy the stock images. These stickers are they're fun. I wonder if there's any tacos in there. So what you're going to do is just select one that you want, and there is a taco in there. How cute is that? That is very cute. So just search in any one of those that you would like: images, icons, cutout people, stickers, or cartoon people. And then you're going to select the image that you would like and go ahead and click on insert. Huh. Okay, now I'm going to undo that because that put it in. When I go to pictures, I need to place it over the cell, not place in the cell, because went over and deleted tacos are fun. So I'm gonna go back to stock images. Sometimes these new things are just such things that you need to play around with. And I'm gonna go back to stickers. And we'll type in taco. There's my little taco again. I'm gonna select him. You know that it's selected because there's a check mark in the upper right-hand corner. It also says insert one. So I can come down here and click on insert, or I can hit the enter key and it will insert my picture. Slowly. Maybe I can't hit the enter key. No, I can't. I misspoke. You need to come down and click on enter. There's my taco. Okay, so we're just going to, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up, I'm going to, let's move this over a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and select this picture, and the height on this is 0.41. So I'm gonna select this picture, and I'm gonna come up, I'm going to type in 0.41. And we'll just make it the safe size. And that is so cute. I'm gonna copy that and I'm just gonna paste it. I'm gonna put a couple of them in here. Matter of fact, I might get rid of the picture from Bing because these are much more lively. So I can select both of these. I'm gonna click on one, hold down the control key and click on the other one. When I copy them, it's gonna copy both of them and I can paste them and put them over at the beginning. So you can play around with that. I don't want to spend a lot of time with the pictures, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the cosmetics and setting these up, because when you go into a worksheet and it's a little bit jazzed up, it's inspiring, I think, anyway, to me. But there are tacos are fun. Just checking to see if you have any questions. It doesn't look that way. So we have some color in here. I'll give you some time to go in and put some other color in if you want to, and change things around at the end of this exercise. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to select A4 all the way down to A17. To A17. Then we're going to go over to the data ribbon, and this is a little bit of a refresher from last week. And we're looking for something called data tools. So data tools has all kinds of great things in here that you can utilize. Right now we're going to look at data validation. So we're going to click on this down arrow and I'm going to highlight data validation. What that's going to do is this is going to allow us to insert a list of items that our business Tacos Are Fun has for sale. So that on the invoice, all we have to do is click on the down arrow and you can select your menu item. So underneath allow, you want to select a list. And then we're going to click inside of source. And we're going to come over to sheet 2. Now, on sheet 2, you'll note that we haven't changed these names yet. Don't worry about that. When we change these names, it will update in the data validation, and I will show you that. So then we're going to highlight from A1 down to A12. When I highlighted from A1 to A12, you can see that it put the absolute reference in there. So it's looking at just that series it's looking at just that series of labels. Soft shell taco down to sour cream. Okay, it's locking in those cells. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on OK. And next to each one of these, you're going to have a down arrow where you can click and select one of the items that are on our menu. Now, as I promised, we are going to change these worksheet names. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to double click on sheet 1. And I'm just going to call this my invoice. Oops, let me spell it right. Invoice template. And then I'm going to come over to sheet 2. I'm going to double click on sheet 2, or you can right click. You can right click and tell it that you want to rename. And you can, and we'll call this our menu items. Then when you're done typing in menu items, just hit the enter key or click someplace else and it will set those. All right, so you have invoice template, and I just double clicked, put that in the edit mode, just like you would in Microsoft Word or many software applications that you utilize. And then I just started typing and I could change those. The other thing that I wanted to point out that's kind of fun, if you right click, there's something called tab color. So you can change your tab color if you want to. So when you're on the worksheet, the tab color is not very vibrant, but when I come over to menu items, it really is. Some people are very color oriented, so I wanted to make sure that I shared that with you because they live by color coding things. So in Microsoft Excel, you can also color code things, which makes it very, very nice. All right, so we looked at the cosmetics, we changed the height, we merged our cells, we changed the background, we changed the text, we inserted some pictures. We looked at data validation, and I just want to stop and make sure that you don't have any questions, that you don't need me to repeat anything. I want to make sure I'm not going too fast. Last week, I think I went a little bit fast. So I'm trying to slow down a little. You just want to, when you're ready to go on, if you just want to give me a thumbs up or put something in the chat so that I know, that would be great. Okay. All right, so we have a thumbs up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have Microsoft Excel. We're going to use something called an XLOOKUP, and this is something new, folks. This is actually something that I just started using. Before the XLOOKUP, I used a VLOOKUP, I used an HLOOKUP, and you might be saying to yourself, well, wait a second. What's the difference between all of these? Is it, a lookup is a lookup, right? A VLOOKUP will only find something if it's organized in a vertical nature. An HLOOKUP will only find something if it's in a horizontal nature. The XLOOKUP, the VLOOKUP also, if you have several lines of data, it's not always reliable. The XLOOKUP combines the two and makes it so much easier. So much easier. It's so much easier to explain how to use the XLOOKUP, and it has more options. So what the XLOOKUP is going to do is it's going to, whatever menu item we select, it's going to come over and it's going to evaluate this data. It's going to say, okay, this is where I'm pulling the information from. All right, so how do I start this? Last week we were typing in functions, which is just fine. But I do want to show you another method that I think is a little bit easier, especially when it comes to the XLOOKUP and for new users in general. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on the FX sign. So we're going to insert a function. Now you could also go to formulas, but this way we could say on the Go back to the home ribbon. This way we can stay on the home ribbon. Helps to be on the home ribbon if you're to stay there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click on this FX and it will populate a window right here. Now, the insert function is really nice. The problem with it is that you kind of have to know Excel lingo. So you have to know Excel's language to know what to look for. We know that we're looking for an X lookup and it makes it a little bit easier. You can also see that we're on most recently used. So you can see that I have been using the X lookup, but for those of you at home following along, what you'll want to do is come to this where it says search for a function, and you're just going to type in that you're looking for the X lookup and click on go. When you click on go, it should populate this X lookup, and you can either double click on that or you can click on OK, and it gives us this window. Now, in this window, it says, okay, it has 5 things in here. It has our lookup value, has our lookup array, it has our return array. It says, if not found, in the match mode. You'll notice that 3 are in boldface and 2 are not. The ones that are in boldface are required. The ones that are not in boldface is easy for me to say. If not found in match mode, we don't necessarily need those, but we'll look at that. So let's start with inserting our X lookup. And you can see that if you glance over here at cell B4 and to put our formula bar, it's starting to build the formula. So it's in that cell, we're building the formula. So the first thing that it wants to know is where's our lookup value? And it does have an up arrow. You don't necessarily have to click on this up arrow. You can just come right over and click on A4, so because that's where our lookup value is going to be. Whether you have something at A4 or not, at this time, don't worry about that. Then we're going to come over and we're going to click inside of lookup array. So where is our lookup array? Our lookup array is on another worksheet, which is just fine. The X lookup allows you to move either within the same worksheet or outside of a worksheet. So if I click on menu items and I tell it that our menu array is in column A. Now I could do one of 2 things. I could highlight A1 down to A12, or I can just click on the A, and you'll notice that it puts into the lookup array that it needs to go to menu items. So it's moving to that worksheet. And if you click on the A, it puts in there A:A, meaning that it is inclusive to column A. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to click inside of return value. Now our return value also happens to be on menu items. When we clicked in return array, you'll note that it flipped us back to the invoice template. No worries, all we have to do is come back and click on menu items again, and then select column B. When you come down and click on OK, it's going to give you probably an NA error if you don't have 0. Okay, and that's fine. So if I click on my down, let's just see if this is working. I'm getting from chicken enchilada and make sure that the chicken enchilada is $3.75. Where's my chicken enchilada? Yes, it is $3.75. So it's pulling the correct price. Always want to double check that. I think I emphasized that last week, that you want to make sure that you're double checking your work in Excel. You don't want to have anything wrong with it. Make sure it's pulling the right price. And with that X lookup, we're going to go over that again. So don't worry. I'm not going to expect you to remember how to do that, but I am saying that with the X lookup, it's much easier than the V lookup. A lot of fewer steps for us to go through. So if you've never used the VLOOKUP, just consider yourself that lucky that you're learning about the XLOOKUP and not having to transfer from the VLOOKUP to the XLOOKUP. I was doing some trading yesterday with some folks that work for a law firm downtown. And they had been using the VLOOKUP, and I was showing them the XLOOKUP, and boy, were they excited about how much easier it is, and how much easier it is to explain to people how to use the XLOOKUP versus the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP. All right, so now I'm going to go down to A5. Excuse me. I'm going to go down to A5, and I'm just going to select the menu item. So with our chicken enchilada, we need some chips to go with that, and we need salsa, and we need guacamole. Oops. The other thing is, and I think I talked about this last week, is that you should be able to just start typing in the item that you want, just like you can on the internet if you're filling something in. It depends on what version of Excel you have. Sometimes if you don't have the Office 365, then that will not work yet. But I'm sure that they're working on that. There is a workaround, and I was watching a YouTube video, but honestly, I couldn't wrap my head around it. There were multiple steps to it, and I just wasn't sure that it was worth going through. So hopefully you have Office 365 and you could just start typing those in. So I like lots of salsa, guacamole, sour cream, that sort of thing. Do I have extra cheese in there? That's something I should put in, extra cheese. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight B5, and we'll go through those steps again as to how you insert the XLOOKUP. Now, if you're asking yourself, well, hey, couldn't I just use the fill handle and fill this down? The answer is yes, you most certainly can, but we need to practice, so we're not going to do it that way. We're going to go down to B5, and we're going to click on the F for function. Again, what are we looking for? You should have the XLOOKUP underneath your most recently used. So we can just go ahead and double click on that, and it will populate this window for us. So here's our window that we're working with. It says, okay, what's the lookup value? So we're going to go click on chips. And then what is our lookup array? Remember that you have to move from invoice template over to menu items. And our lookup item is in A. Now, I think I mentioned this last week, but I do want to emphasize this. You potentially could just type this in manually. However, the increase, the probability that you are going to have an error statement utilizing this function just because of human error trying to type it in, you're much better off using your mouse. You'll note that I have not been typing anything in. I have been using my mouse, clicking on the items that we need in order to build this function. So I do see people trying to do that. Again, I had a workshop yesterday and people were doing it, and I was amazed that some people could get it to work. I just think that eliminating that human error is very important. So you'll also notice, I didn't point this out the last time, that when I selected A5, that it gives me what's in A5. When I select my menu items, it gives me my menu items. So it's kind of telling you off to the side, this is what you selected. And then we're going to come down, we're going to click inside return array. Remember, it does pop us back to the invoice template. So we're going to come back over to menu item. And we're going to hover our mouse over the B, and we're gonna click on column B. And then we're just gonna come over and we're going to click on OK. And let's see, yes, it worked again for us. That is totally awesome, that we have this up and running. All right, so now I'm gonna go down to B6. So in B6, same thing, insert that function, go to the lookup. Our lookup value is, this time it's in A6, so it's gonna say salsa over here to the side. Then we're gonna click inside of lookup array, and we're going to move to the menu items. And we're going to click on the A to select column A, because that's where our menu items reside. Then we're going to click inside of return array. And we're going to move from the invoice template back over to the menu items. And we're going to select column B. And you can see that it has salsa, it has our list of invoice items that we have, and our list of prices. So now we're going to come down and we're going to click inside of if not found. So when I filled that down, you might have noticed that if nothing was found, it put zeros in there. And we don't really want that, because that doesn't make our invoice look nice. So what we can do in this case is will that work? I'm just gonna put in the reason that I'm hesitating, and when I say that I just started working with the XLOOKUP, I'm not joking. So I'm gonna try putting in open quote, close quote. But I'm not sure if that, what I want it to do is just to give us a blank cell. But I'm afraid that it's gonna print the open quote, close quote. We might have to come back in. As a matter of fact, yes, it is, because look over here to the right. I'm just gonna backspace those. I'm gonna put in 5 spaces, and I think that that will populate a blank cell for us as opposed to the 0, but let's test it out. So I'm just gonna click on OK. And our salsa is 98 cents. Now let's test that. And if we pull down to, if we use our fill handle and come down, nope, it's still putting in that 0. Okay. It's still put in the quotes. Okay. What you can do, I have another workaround. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna have it print something in there. Buy something else. So now, which one did I do that on? This one? So now where those zeros are, when I fill this down, it's gonna put in buy some, nope, it must have been this one that I did it to. It's going to say buy something else. Well, which one did I put it in? I wonder why it's not staying in there. That's the great thing about Excel. You have all kinds of problem solving. You are constantly problem solving. You are constantly utilizing your critical thinking skills. Now, it didn't like that either. Let's just see what it didn't like. Inconsistent formula. Okay, we're gonna tell it to ignore that. I know it's inconsistent. That's all right. Huh. Oh, I see, okay, I see what's going on. I'm gonna take that out. But I'll show you, I know what I work around. So I'm gonna go ahead and double click on this. And I want to go back to my function. I want that window to pull up. And I'm just going to delete this. Because I'm using that in the wrong way, I think. But at any rate, I'll show you a workaround. So any questions on the X lookup? On the X lookup? No, I don't see any questions. All right, so let's go back up. Now we've got our X lookup. We all know that that's a really nice tool. What we're going to do is we are going to nest two functions. And the reason that we're going to nest two functions is so that we don't see those zeros. So I'm going to go ahead, I double click on B4. And you can see that I activated that particular function. And I clicked in between the equal sign and the X. So I'm going to type in, we're going to nest the if error statement. Now it's not necessarily an error, but this will allow us to get rid of the zeros, and you'll see why I was putting in the open quote, close quote, because I was trying to combine the X lookup and the if error without inserting the if error. I was under the impression that it worked that way, but evidently not. All right. So once you type in the if error, then I need you to click all the way to the right. So after the last close parentheses, you're going to click and place your cursor there. So my cursor is just kind of flashing right here. It might be a little bit hard to see. The other thing that I want to note is that now you have an open parenthesis, you have an open parenthesis, you have a closed parenthesis, and Excel has color coded those because if you have an open parenthesis, you have to match it with a closed parenthesis, or Excel will give you an error statement. So they're trying to help you with a visual reminder that you do need to put in a closed parenthesis. Don't put it in yet. We're not done. We're almost done putting in the if error. Don't put it in quite yet. We're going to put in a comma, and then we're going to use the open quote, close parenthesis. Okay. So you're going to put the if error in between the equal and the X lookup. And then you're going to go to the very end and you're going to put in a comma, open quote, close parenthesis. Now you have to hold down the shift key for the open quote, close quote, and the close parenthesis. So let's hit the enter key. Nothing, you're not going to see anything happen, but when I fill this down, fingers crossed. Interesting. Okay. I'm giving myself homework for the week, folks. That worked with the H lookup and the V lookup, the if error didn't, and it is not budging in here. We will take a break in about 15 minutes, and I'm going to look into this. But in the meanwhile, let's just go ahead and keep going. We will just keep going. So now what I'd like you to do is to come over and click in C4. And for every menu item that you have, I have, it looks like 5 different menu items. You could put in your quantity. So you might be buying just one, you might be buying for your whole team, your whole family, however many you need. So I'm just going to put in a 5 for each one. Now I'm looking at the formatting of these cells. Over here, even though we brought this in from the menu items where it did have a dollar sign, the X lookup, the V lookup, the H lookup, none of those carry the dollar sign over. So I'm gonna look in subtotal. What does that say? That is formatted to general. How about the tax? The tax is formatted to general. And how about the line? Those are all formatted to general. So before we proceed, let's format our cells accordingly. I'm going to highlight from B4 down to B17. Then, to save myself a little bit of time, I'm gonna let up on my mouse and I'm gonna hold down the control key and I'm going to highlight from D4 down to F17. Now, why did I hold down the control key? And I know we talked about this last week, but the control key will allow you to select non-adjacent items. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to come up and we're going to go to all the way down to, no, we can just go right here. We can go to currency. Let's just apply currency. So we do have the zeros there. Like I said, when we go on break, I'll figure out what's going on. But we've also formatted the other cells for subtotal, for our sales tax, and for our line total to currency, so we don't need to worry about that. We're good to go. We're ready. So now our subtotal is going to be just a formula. We won't be using a function for this. So I'm going to type in the equal sign, and we're going to take the unit price, which is B4, times C4. So just simply the unit price times the quantity, and you can hit the enter key, and it gives me 1875 for my 5 chicken enchiladas. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and fill this down to row 18. Now, note that I just randomly went down, how many rows do I have here? Let's see, 14. I have 14 rows for items. That was just a random pick. You might not need 14. You might need more than 14. You can always insert rows if you need to. Again, this is just for teaching purposes. Okay, so we have that. Now, I'm going to come over to sales tax. Now, you'll note that the sales tax is in cell F2. So, we're going to start off by creating this formula by doing this. We're going to type in the equal sign, and then I'm going to put in my subtotal, so D4, times F2. So D4 times F2. Now remember, at the beginning of our workshop today, I said we were going to practice the difference between relative reference and absolute reference. Because I'm going to fill this down, I need to create the absolute reference on row 2 because I want it to freeze row 2 or always look at that cell. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to hit the F4 key on my keyboard. And that is the keyboard shortcut for inserting the absolute reference. Now, we don't necessarily have to freeze row F or column F, excuse me, because we're filling down in column F. But again, if you're not sure, just put them, go ahead and put the dollar sign in both. Now, if you're at home and you're saying, wait a second, Julie, I hit the F4 key, and this is like a toggle switch, and nothing's happening. On different computers, sometimes you have to hold down maybe the Alt F4 or the Shift F4. So you might have to play around with it just a little bit to figure out what your keyboard shortcut is. Most keyboard shortcuts are the same, but I found that this one varies just a little bit when using that F4 key. What I'm saying F4, I don't mean the F and the 4. If you look at the very top of your keyboard, you have function keys that go from F1 to F12, and that is the F4 key that I'm referring to. So what that did was it locked in the row 2 or F2. So when I fill this down, or when we fill this down, I should say, it will allow us to go from, so we have a relative reference and we have an absolute reference. Let's go ahead and fill this down. And then we'll talk about that. Tell me, where's my, there we go. Oops. So you can just double click and it will fill it down. It went one row too many, so I'm just gonna delete that one. Now let's look at our formulas. And again, to look at my formulas, you can hold down the control key and the tilde, or you can go to the formulas ribbon and click on show formulas. So let's take a look at the way that we combined a relative reference and an absolute reference. Just making sure that there's no questions. So it went from line item D4, D5, D6, all the way down to line item D17, which is exactly what we wanted it to do. But it locked in row F2 because that's what has our tax rate in there, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off my show formula so we can go back to the working mode. And if I come up here and I change my tax rate, maybe the tax rate went up to 8%, and I hit the enter key, it's going to increase these numbers. See how they flipped? So by putting the tax rate in to a cell, it's going to save you a little bit of time. You could have built the formula. You could have said equal D4 times 7.5%, but then if this is a working, if you have to go back, you know, if it's not an invoice, like an invoice, you're not going to probably use again. But if you have something that a worksheet or a workbook that you have that percentage in, maybe it's not a tax rate, maybe it's a bonus, maybe it is commission, maybe it is a deduction, whatever the case may be, you could just put that in one place, and that way you wouldn't have to change all of your formulas. You could simply just change the tax rate in one place. So I'm gonna hit the enter key. We're gonna leave it just like that. That looks really cool. We've gotten a lot of work done so far here this morning. So now I'm gonna move over to my line total. So in my line total, I'm gonna type in equal, and we want our subtotal plus our sales tax. I'm gonna hit the enter key, gives me that total, and I'm gonna fill this down to row 18. Okay, so we have that. Now I'm gonna come down to D18. And in D18, I'm gonna move back to the home ribbon. And I'm just gonna come up here, I'm gonna click on auto sum. So it says, okay, here's what I've got. I've got equal sum, open parentheses, D4, colon, D17, close the parentheses. So when I hit the enter key, it automatically filled over, which is really cool. It doesn't always do that. Some of the times it does, but I am not seeing that when it filled over, I've got an issue anyway with cell F18 because I'm out 3 decimals and I don't have currency applied. So I'm going to come back down and I'm going to apply currency, and it changed that for me. So we are good to go. All right. Any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions. At any time, feel free to turn your mic on or put a question in the chat if you do have one. I have just about, we're just approaching noon, so I'm going to pause the recording, and we will begin again at 12:05. So we'll go ahead and take a quick break. So if you need to, use the restroom, grab another cup of coffee or whatever the case may be, we will resume at 12:05. I'm gonna stay here because I'm gonna look for how to get those zeros to disappear. We did not. Okay, so now that we're recording again, let me undo that. Can. As I was saying, I did not find a solution to have these zeros be print a blank cell. If you are at home and you have a resolution, please do share it with me. In the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and delete those. If you do add more information, we can fill down the cells. Now, keep in mind that even if I do add another item, let's say I go over here and I add a cheese and onion enchilada. When I go to fill this down, I don't have to fill it down in column B, C, D, E, and F. I can highlight all 5 of them and fill it down one, and it will fill all at the same time. So you don't have to go in and fill one item at a time. You can highlight those cells and fill those out. Okay. So that concludes our activity 1. Now we're going to go on and we are going to go over to activity 2. This looks somewhat like what we started last week. I changed it a little bit for what I wanted to do for today. So I'm just going to give you a second to go ahead and bring up activity 2. And again, the first thing we're going to do is look at a little bit of the cosmetics of the table, of the data array, I should say. It's not a table yet, but we're going to learn how to insert a table as well. So in the activity 2, I'm just going to highlight A1 all the way over to F1. What font is this in? Okay, so let's select the entire worksheet. So I'm going to select the entire worksheet. I'm going to change the font to Georgia. Now, if you like the font that this is in, go ahead and just leave it there. Now, you'll note that when I change that font, I have some pound signs. That's no worries. Those pound signs are saying, hey, I don't have enough room in the column, so give me some more room. There we go. So I just came up here and you can double click, or I pulled that out a little bit, and everybody is good. All right, so now, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight from A1 over to F1. And I'm going to center these. Now, I'm not going to merge and center them. I'm just going to tell each one of them to center from within their cells. And then I kind of like the green and the white, so we'll go with that. We can make that in boldface, maybe a little bit darker. There we go. When we insert our table, it's going to change the color scheme, so we're not going to worry too much about this. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select cell A2, and I'm going to hold down the control and the shift and hit my down arrow, and it selects the entire row. Or you can pull down, but that's just it can be painful sometimes. We only have 30 rows, but imagine if you've got 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 rows. You don't want to do that. And I'm just going to tell this to left align. Makes it look a little bit better. Let's see. We've got everything else. I'm going to come over here to quantity. I'm going to do control shift and the down arrow again. I'm just going to tell those to center. Make that look a little bit better. Now, as I'm scrolling down, and this may be because I'm zoomed in, but as you're scrolling down, you see what's happening? I lose my my information. Oh, I know I don't lose my information at the top. I must have froze those I must have froze that before I gave this to you. So that's nice that those are frozen. If you need me to review that, I can go ahead and do that. Last week we looked at this. We just went to the view ribbon. Click on the wrong thing. Come here, go to the view ribbon. There we are. And on the view ribbon, we're going to go underneath the Windows group and to freeze panes. And we're just going to tell it to freeze the top row. So what that does is it allows us to see our labels at all times. Looks much better. And I'm noticing the other thing I can do, some of these cells are a little bit wide. Let me see what happens when I do this. I'm just going to go up and double click. That looks a little bit better, brings it all in, and we'll leave our total. Okay, so just playing around with the cosmetics of your worksheet. If you're not one of those people that I don't care what it looks like, then that's fine too. But I like mine to look pretty. Okay, so we're just gonna type in the equal sign. We need our total, and I'm going to do price times and E2. So for our total, we're just going to say D2 times E2 and hit the enter key. And it gives me my total for my first item. We're just going to go ahead and we are going to fill that down, close that up, and it gives me my total. Now, we could sit here and we could do several different things. Let's say that you wanted to know what did I how much did I spend at Amazon? Now, the next thing we're going to look at is a pivot table. So I want to show you how easy it is to utilize a pivot table in Microsoft Excel. All right. There's a couple of different ways that we can handle this. Now, I'm just going to highlight my stores. And because we have data validation in there, I'm interested to see what's going to happen here. I want those to be in the sort from A to Z. I want it to expand my selection because I need date, item, price, quantity, and total to also come with it. Oh, and it does. Okay. Wasn't sure because of the data validation. So excellent that it did that. Before I use the pivot table, this is what I would do. I would put these in order so that all of my Amazon purchases were together, all of my Best Buy, all of my CVS, Home Depot, everything was together. Now you don't need to do this. You could sort them, but you don't need to do this next one because it's what we're not going to do. But before I became aware of a pivot table, I would go in and I would insert in between each one of these items, and I would put in like a subtotal or a total for right here, so that I could get so that I could get my subtotal. We don't have to do that because we have something called a pivot table. So in the pivot table, to insert a pivot table, this is what we're going to do. We're going to click inside of this data array, anywhere between A1 and F30. And I am going to go to the insert ribbon. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a table. All right. Anytime that you have a data array, you should create a data table array. It's just going to make everything a lot easier. Okay. As we go into the pivot tables and go from there. Just making sure there's no questions. All right, I don't see anything. We got a quiet Sunday group this morning. So I recall you were kind of quiet last week too, that's okay. So we're gonna insert our table, so we're gonna go to insert and we're gonna go to table, or you can hit Control T as in Tom, and that is the keyboard shortcut. And we have, what we have here is it inserted the table. And it says $sign. $A, $1, colon, $F, $30 for 30. So that entails our entire table. And then we're going to make sure that you have a check mark in my table. Has headers. My table has headers. And go ahead and click on OK. So it's going to insert our table. See what I mean? I told you it was going to change the color of it. So now I have green and blue. Does that really match? Let's go with green and purple. Ooh, is that bright? So I have green and purple. All right, so we inserted our table. Now we're gonna go up and we're gonna insert. Well, wait a second. Let me go. Let's stick with the table for a minute. I got caught up in the colors, and let's rename our table. So table 1, it defaults to table 1. If you put it in another table, it's going to go to table 2 and so on. But let's just call this my data. Now, when you rename the table, you cannot put a space in. So you'll note that when I typed in my data, I put it all together. You can put in my and an underscore in data. If you put a space in, Excel is going to yell at you a little bit. It's going to give you that little ding. Sorry, you can't do that. So make sure that you do not put a space in. And I'm going to hit the Enter key. Then I'm going to go to Insert and to Pivot Table. And we're going to insert our pivot table. And you might be saying to yourself, but Julie, you haven't even told us what a pivot table is yet. And I haven't, and I understand that. When you click on pivot table, go to table range, and it will say the name of your table. So I did by table my data. That's the name of the range and table. And I do want a new worksheet, so I'm going to click on OK. And then we're going to talk about what is a pivot table. A pivot table allows you to analyze your data very quickly. Okay, so you don't need to go in and create all of the sum functions and the averages and those sorts of things, because the pivot table does it for you just like this. So we have our expenses on our 2024 expenses. And if I want to know what have I spent so far at Amazon or Best Buy or CVS, I inserted the table, I inserted a pivot table, and you didn't have to insert the table, but I'm going to show you why it's better to do that. And then we have sheet 1, which is our pivot table. We're going to show you how to analyze this. So over here is our working area on the left-hand side. You'll note that we have 2 new ribbons. We have the pivot table analyze, and we have the design. All right, over here on the right, this is really where we have all the magic and where that happens. You'll note that over here, I'm gonna pull this out a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. We have date, item, store, price, quantity, total. Is that a coincidence? No, it's not. It pulled it all from this data. Date, item, store, price, quantity, total. So it's working. It pulled all of the data from our 2024 expenses into the pivot table. We just need to tell it what we want it to analyze. Down below all of our fields, we have filters, we have columns, we have rows, and we have values. Now I'm just going to touch we're just going to touch on what a pivot table is today. Pivot tables are very powerful, and you can do a lot of different things with them, but I just want you to start using them if you're not already. And this is the easiest way to do it. If you have a budget or data that you're really familiar with, that you'll be able to insert a pivot table, that would be really nice. The other thing that I want to mention is that if you were with me last week, you know that we did 2 budgets. The first budget was simply to show you how to insert functions, labels, values, change the format of a cell. The way that we formatted that would not be conducive to a pivot table. So you want to make sure that when you're laying out your data, that it's in a very organized manner, such as our 2024 expenses, because that will allow a pivot table to analyze the data. All right, and I'm sitting here thinking, where did the word pivot table come from? I don't know, but I'm gonna find out. Hopefully you join me next week as we finish up the tech in the workplace, and I'll be able to tell you. So what we have, filters, we have columns, we have rows, and we have values. If I take one of these items and let's just say store, if I put a check mark in store, over on the right hand side, it's going to list all of the stores that I have in my 2024 expenses. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you. Okay, so it gave me all of those. Now, maybe you don't want those in rows. Maybe you want those in columns. You can put them up there. I don't like the way that that looks. To me, it's more organized if it's in rows. That's what the pivot table defaults to, but you can move it if you want to. All right. Then, if you want your totals, watch this. I'm going to check mark in totals. And it's going to come down here to values. Or if I want to, like I did earlier, I can drag and drop this down there. And boom, there it is. It's telling me exactly what I spent at Amazon, at Best Buy, at CVS, at Home Depot, and so on. It automatically creates a sum function for me. And a couple of clicks. I clicked on store, I clicked on total, gives me that information. Right now. I hope that you're saying, oh, this is wonderful. I've never used a pivot table before. I remember the first time that I was introduced to a pivot table. Kind of a funny story. I was in my office and I got a phone call from a colleague of mine, and he said, Julie, can you come up to my office? I'm having problems with a pivot table. And I said, sure, I'll be right up. So I went up there, and on my way up there, I'm laughing, thinking, I've never used a pivot table before. As a matter of fact, I don't even know what a pivot table is. This was quite a few years ago. And I went into his office and I said, well, what are you trying to do here? And he explained it to me. And I clicked on a couple of things and I made it work. And I have no idea what I even did. And I walked out and I was chuckling to myself. And I'm thinking that was lucky. And then I started, as I'm walking back out of my office, I started thinking, wait a second. I am, that is a time saver, work smarter, not harder. With all of the data that I analyze, why aren't I using a pivot table instead of manually going in, entering cells, putting in some function? I can be using a pivot table. I did go back up a couple of days later to admit to him that I had never seen one and that he had made my life much easier by introducing them to me. At any rate, just wanted to put that quick story in there for you. So now we're going to stay right here for a second because I want to show you why we inserted the table and how easy it's going to be to add more information to our 2024 expenses and have it impact our pivot table. We put our sum of total. I put total down here and it defaults to total. But the pivot table, I'm going to come down here, click on the down arrow and go to value field settings. The pivot table has 9 built-in calculations, and we'll look at more of these. It's always going to do the sum of total, but you have count, you have average, you have max, you have min, you have product, you have count numbers, standard deviation P, variance, and variance P. So those are all built in. If you want to calculate something else, you can manually calculate that, or you can create other calculations yourself. Okay, so if you want a 10% increase or a 20% increase, and that's something that you calculate quite frequently, you can create that and it will stay in your pivot table so you can use it in the future. And we'll look at that. but there are 9 built in. We have number format. This number format is something that you've seen a lot. So I'm just gonna come down here, I'm gonna go to currency, click on OK, and it hasn't changed them yet, but it will. Custom name, if you don't want it to say sum of total, you can change that. You can change it from the cell too. The one thing that you can't do, I can't call it total because I have a field, a pivot table field called total. So I could do like 2024 total and change it. When I click on OK, it'll change sum of total. It will also change the to currency. Ta-da, there it is. All right. So let's go back to 2024 expenses. Now we're going to insert another expense. All right. So there's some different ways that we can do this. You can insert a cell if you want to. You don't need to. Let's come down here and we'll put in a date. So today is, let's see, April, let's say today, 21st, 2024. And we're gonna buy something from Amazon, and maybe it's a swimsuit. And it was $34.91, something like that. And we bought one of them. Okay. So you see what it did when I went to add this in? It added it to my table. I didn't do that. It automatically added that information to my table. Now, if I come back over here to sheet 1 to my pivot table, I added $34.91 to my Amazon expenses. You would think that it would automatically update, but pivot tables work just a little bit differently. You have to come up here to pivot table analyze and click on refresh. When I click on refresh, see how it increased that to $276.29. All right. Now you're still probably scratching your head saying, but why did we put in the pivot table or the table again? If I hadn't put in the table, I would have to, every time I added information, I would have to go in here to change data source. Because it's in the table, it updates that for me automatically. See what I mean? When I scroll down, the dancing ants includes the swimsuit from Amazon. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. Takes me back to my pivot table, and we have this information. Okay, so you can add that. Just remember to refresh, or your data will not update. Now we can add some other things in here. We can play around with this a little bit. You know, maybe you want the items in there too. So now what it did was it put in Amazon, and it put in everything that I bought at Amazon. So it has it in kind of a nice, neat, organized manner. So remember when I put these in alphabetical order, you don't even need to do that because the pivot table does it for you. So I have all of those. I don't necessarily have to have them. I can take the check mark back out, but if I want to, you know, I can keep adding information to my pivot table and just playing around with that a little bit. Okay, let's come down here and let's name our sheet. So I'm just going to call this. I'm going to double click on sheet 1, and I'm going to call this pivot table 1. All right. Now, I want to add some information to this, but I also want to chart my totals. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this pivot table so that we have a copy of it, because we're going to have 2 different pivot tables. We're going to have one that has just my 2024 totals, and one that has my totals, the minimum item that I purchased, the maximum item that I purchased, and the average of what I've spent at each one of those venues. Okay, so to copy this pivot table, The easiest way to do that is to hover your mouse over the word pivot table. Hold down the control key. And pull this over. And see that little piece of paper with plus sign on it? Let it on your mouse. And it just copied that for us, okay? We could have gone back to the 2024 expenses, insert pivot table, but this is a little bit easier. So we're just gonna call this, I'm gonna rename this my pivot table 2. So it says pivot table 1 in, and then a 2 in parentheses. I'm just gonna call this pivot table 2. All right, we are off and running. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. And sometimes when I get excited, I start talking a little bit faster, so I'm gonna try to slow down. I think I was going a little bit fast when I got to the pivot tables. So let's go in and let's go to, if you're not on pivot table analyze, go to pivot table analyze, go to pivot chart. Now in pivot chart, we're gonna select a chart that we want. I kind of tend to go for the bar charts. You can pick any one that you want. In the pivot chart, it doesn't give you, well, it does give you recommended pivot tables, but that's something a little bit different. It doesn't give you the recommended. So I'm just gonna go with a bar chart. I'm gonna click on OK. And once again, it's gonna put this right over the top of my data. I don't want that there. So we're gonna go to design and we're gonna tell it to move the chart. So I'm gonna come over to move chart. And I'm gonna put the radio button in new sheet, and I'm going to tell that this is my chart. And click on OK. All right, so there's my chart. Now, I'm gonna go to design. I'm gonna make this, make some changes, just like you did with the other chart that we created. So I like darker backgrounds. I don't need this. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe make my font just a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna right click, I'm gonna go to font. I'm gonna tell it that I want it to be Georgia. Oops. And then I'm gonna tell it that I want it to be not 10, but maybe 20. That might be a little bit big. Let's just click on OK to see what happens. Ah, that looks nice. Now we're up. No, that's okay. You can see down at the bottom that it's a little bit messy. We have a couple of ways that we can deal with that. The way that I'm going to deal with it is I'm going to delete it because I'm going to add some different chart elements in. So I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to go up to add chart elements. I'm going to go to data labels and I want to know exactly what I spent. So I'm going to have my data labels. Those are a little big, not too bad. In there, do I want to call out? No, definitely don't want to call out. Outside end, that looks nice. I am going to go in and change the colors of my bar. I think that blue's a little drab. When I select one bar, it selects all the bars. I'm just going to come over here to format and let's find a color that's a little bit more vibrant. We're going with a lot of green today and purple. Let's see. Let's go to more color fills. And I'm going to go with 8. Wow. Now that spices it up a lot. Okay, so now we have our pivot table. We have our pivot table chart. Now, you'll notice that there's a few things on here, like store. What is this? The pivot table chart has a filter on it as well, okay? So if I click on this down arrow, it's gonna say, okay, what do you wanna do? You just wanna look at a couple of them? I'm gonna come up here, I'm gonna tell it that I don't want all of them. And that I just want maybe Amazon, Best Buy, and Hy-Vee. When I click on OK, it's going to filter out those other stores. It's not deleting them, I'm just not seeing them. So I'm gonna click on OK. And there it is. Now, on my pivot table 1, when I click on it, it also filters this because those are talking to one another. So if I go to my filter on my pivot table 1 and I tell it that I want them all back, I can click on OK, it brings them back and it brings them back on my chart as well. So if you're doing a live demonstration, obviously you probably wouldn't be doing a live demonstration of your expenses. So far this year, you know, these are mock expenses, as you very well know. But if you're doing a live demonstration, the pivot table is a great way to go because if your manager, maybe you're in sales and your manager wants to, you're the sales manager, but your district manager wants to look at 2 specific salespeople. You can go to filter, put the check mark in those 2 people, or maybe you want a specific region, a specific state, a city, whatever the case may be. Doing a live demonstration, you can zoom in, no pun intended, since we're on Zoom. You can zoom in on what's going on. Okay, so that's your that's one pivot table chart. Let's come over to our pivot table. Now, when we come to our pivot table, remember how I told you that we were going to do average and min, max, and average. Okay, how do I do that? That's not in here. How do I do that? I can have as many items in value as I want. So if I take total, don't take the check mark out of there, but hover your mouse over total and drag and drop another copy in. Oops, drag and drop another copy in. It gives me the same thing, sum of total. Now, we don't want that, but we can change it. So once you have that in, we're going to come down and click on the down arrow. We're going to go to value field settings. We're going to tell it that we want the max of total. So we're changing the calculation to max. While we're in here, we're going to go to number format. We're going to tell it that we want it to be in currency. We can have 2 decimal places, that's just fine. And click on OK. Then I'm going to come over and I am going to change my max to print 2024 max purchase. Okay, so we changed it to maximum. We changed the number format to currency. We changed the custom name to 2024 max purchase. Go ahead and click on OK. And here we have it. So our max purchase at Amazon is $65. And then you can see the rest. So if you want to see the item, let's see what happens when I put item in. It shows me, it doesn't show me the max item, but I could very easily look at that and say, okay, the most expensive thing I bought at Amazon was purse. I don't really want those items in there. I just want to show you that. Okay. So click around, play around. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our total and we're going to put it back down here again. Remember, it's going to default to sum, but we're going to change that. We're going to click on the down arrow. We're going to go to value field settings. This one is going to be the minimum purchase. We're going to go to number format, change this to currency, 2 decimal places. Click on OK. Change the custom name to 2024 min purchase. So we changed our number format, we have minimum, and we changed our custom name. We're gonna click on OK. And there's our minimum purchase. Looking pretty good. All right, we want this down there again. So I'm gonna drag and drop this down again. It's gonna default to sum of total. We're gonna go in, the value field settings. We have, what do we have? Average, we want our average. What's the average that we spend at each one of these stores? So then we're gonna go to number format. We're gonna change it to currency. You can see a pattern going here, right? 2 decimal places, click on OK. Come up here to average. And we're gonna click on OK. So we have our total, make that, let's bring that out, give that some more room. So we have our total, our max, our min, our average of what we've spent at each place. You know, you can go in, if I want to, I can center these. You can also, if you want these to be, you know, you can sort these if you want to. So if I want these sorted, I can come into the B4, do a right click. I can tell it that I want to sort smallest to largest. It doesn't ask me if it wants to expand it because it automatically does that. But then I've got that from smallest to largest. It's telling me that my smallest purchase was at CVS. My largest purchase was at Nebraska Furniture Mart. Just lots of different things that you can look at. You know what? I don't think I had these selected. So let's go and just make everything the same. Let's center those. There we go. All right. Questions? All right. So let's put in another total. I'm gonna come up here to total and I'm just gonna drag and drop this down. Did I bring another one down? No, I guess I didn't. If you're running out of room down here, there we go. Now I've got one in. You can adjust this. If I hover my mouse right over where it says drag fields between areas, I can pull this up. Or it will give me a scrolling bar if it runs out of room. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to go to value field settings. And I'm gonna do count. I want to know how many items have I bought at each store. Now the way that I put this in here, like Hy-Vee, I obviously bought multiple items. It's not going to give me a count of everything that I bought because I didn't put it in that way. I just bulked it into one. But it will tell me how many purchases or how many times I've been shopping at each store I guess. Okay, the number format is fine. It's gonna be general. So we can click on OK. And it tells me, here's my counts. So it looks like, look at that, Amazon is the highest, so I mentioned that. And the others are that. Okay. So remember, let's just kind of review this. We started off with just our 2024 expenses. And last week, we didn't look at this, because last week we had our data validation, and we reviewed that today. With this information, what we did was we went in, we inserted a table. Then, and that's underneath the insert ribbon. I'm not gonna do this again because it's already there. I'm just gonna do a little review. Table, then we inserted a pivot table. So we had our pivot table 1. We learned all about the pivot table fields that are identical to the table that we inserted the pivot table with. We looked at the totals, we created a chart. We looked at the filter, so we know that we can filter from here. You can also sort from A to Z, Z to A, all kinds of great little things. You can come in and then we copied this. Remember, we copied this, so we had our pivot table 2, and we added the total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more times, so that we could include the max, the min, the average, and the count. Now, the one thing you need to be careful about is that if you decide you don't want one of these, what if I don't want one of these? So I don't want to know the count. So if I take the count out, all I'm going to do is drag and drop it. Or you may have noticed that you can click on the down arrow and tell it to remove the field. Either one will work. Then if I decide I want that back, let's say I really do want that back. When I come down, it's still going to go to sum of total. So I have to do that all over again. So just keep that in mind, that if you delete one and you decide you want it back, you have to go through all these motions again. That's why I created 2 different pivot tables, and it's just a little bit easier to do that. So this is just going to be my 2024 count. There we go. So keep that in mind, that if you do delete one, if you put it back in, you have to go through those steps again. So if there's multiple things that you want to calculate, you can either insert another pivot table, or you can copy it like I taught you, like we talked about earlier. I hovered my mouse over, I held down on the control key, and I pulled to the right. Now, I didn't want to insert another one, so I didn't let up on my mouse. If you need multiple, if you need to copy multiple worksheets, like I have a report that I look at every Wednesday, and I have to add 9 worksheets to the workbook. So I can add them. I can pull down the control key, and I can select all of these, and I can pull to the right, and it'll select up on my mouse. So I'll show you what's in it. Whoops, what happened? Didn't do anything. What happened? Oh, it's a shift key. I'm sorry. Okay, shift. Why isn't it letting me do that? Okay, let's. Okay. I'm gonna click on that one. This is funny. I do this all the time. Why isn't it letting me do it? Well, maybe if I just go with 2. There we go. See what's happening? See that there are sheets that are layered in there. It's saying it's going to duplicate both of those. I don't need to do that, so I'm going to just let up on my backs. But man, that was stressful not being able to do that. That's a pretty simple little feature there. So we looked at the pivot chart. We also looked at the X lookup. We discussed the absolute versus the relative reference. Looked at all kinds of great things today. We have just a few minutes left, so I want to see if there is any questions from the group. Again, this is being recorded, so I can email this out to folks if you want to go through the exercises again, starting from scratch. The recording is available. This morning, I sent you. I couldn't get in to get it, but I finally got it this morning. I got the recording from last week, so That has been emailed out to you. And I now have access to the recordings again, so when this is available, I don't know, it'll take a while this afternoon. I will try to get that out to you either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. So that if you want to look at it again, you can. If there's anything else that you want me to cover, we have another 2 hours next week. I had planned on doing some PowerPoint, but we will definitely have time for Excel if you think that that's would be of more value to you than PowerPoint. But if you have something specific that you want me to cover, let me know. If you want me to look at a file, and it is not personal, or it doesn't have any data that would impact your place of employment, then feel free to email it to me. I'm happy to look at it for you, or an example. An example would be just as good. It's not letting me do that. Oh. I just noticed something on the chart that I won't change. There we go. I don't need this. Whoop, come here. I can delete that. No, I know what else I wanted to mention. On your pivot tables. If you don't have your pivot table fields, it's because you're not clicked inside of the working area. They go away because it doesn't think that you're working with them. If you do click in here and they don't populate back, go to pivot table analyze and click on field lists. Okay, just click on field lists. That happens a lot. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. Okay, I do not see any questions popping up. Again, if you think of something, feel free to email me. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you next week for Tech in the Workplace Day 4 as we wrap up this series. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thanks.